by Joseph Davidowitz and Margie Morris. They have confirmed that the pyramid was not built as a tomb, but as a temple for a sun god. They wrote this on page 182. Khufu, and Khufu was the name of the pharaoh who built the pyramid, named the monument, his monument, the pyramid, which is the place of the sunrise and sunset. The name depicted the pyramid as the throne of the sun god Ra during his daily course across the heavens. Now this is a cross-section of the pyramid. The pyramid is entered from the entrance to your right, where we got the red arrow, and the visitor then enters what is called the descending passageway, also shown in red on this picture. After walking a short time, he comes to what is called the ascending passageway. He has a choice here, and he can either continue walking down the descending passageway, or he can start his walk up what has been called the ascending passageway, shown in orange on the picture. After a while, he comes to another choice. He can walk on a level walkway into what has been called the Queen's Chamber, shown in green on the picture, or he can enter a large room called the Grand Gallery, shown in purple. When he completes his walk through the Grand Gallery, he can enter what has been called the King's Chamber, shown in yellow. The King's Chamber was built supposedly as the burial room of a pharaoh, but notice that the Masons claim that the pyramid was not built as a tomb, it was built as a house for a sun god. This is a photograph of what they call the King's Room. The box the man is standing beside is supposed to be the tomb of a pharaoh, but there was no pharaoh inside when the first modern visitors entered the room. There was no other paraphernalia in the room, it was completely empty. That box was not built as a burial tomb, it was built as a box in which an initiate is laid during an initiation ceremony. And to show you that the builders of the pyramid knew that, let's look at the cross-section of the pyramid again. Those black lines leading off on both sides of the two large rooms in the pyramid, the Queen's Chamber, shown in green, and the King's Chamber, shown in yellow, are air vents. They extend all the way through the pyramid to the outside air. Their purpose is to get oxygen into the rooms. That means that the builders anticipated that there would be oxygen breathing people in those rooms. If these rooms were built as tombs, the last thing the builders would want in the room was oxygen, because the Egyptians knew that oxygen destroys decaying human flesh. If they were burying their pharaoh for eternity, the last thing they wanted in the room was oxygen. Somewhere in my reading in the past, and I don't remember exactly where I read this, I read a story that was written about the opening of one of those tombs of a pharaoh. As I remember, the archaeologist had to break through a wax seal around the entranceway into the tomb to enter the room. The doorway had blocks that were precisely cut so that hardly any air could get into the room, and the wax had been used to completely ensure that no air would get inside the burial chamber. The people who buried the pharaoh left behind several torches in the room that were being allowed to burn off all of the oxygen inside of the room after they had pushed the blocks into the doorway and then sealed the doorway with wax. The torches would of course die out after all the oxygen was burned up. The reason they went to all of this trouble was to preserve the body as well as they could after burial. As I remember, the first archaeologist into the room said that the air was putrid because there was no oxygen in it, because the Egyptians knew. And if they knew that that was true, why would they put air vents into the tomb of the pyramid as they did in the pyramid itself? Now this is a picture of the author Peter Tompkins examining one of these air shaft openings. The Masons of today also know that the pyramid near Cairo was built as a temple of initiation to the sun god. Wilfred Gregson, an architect and a 33rd degree Mason, wrote in a New Age magazine, obviously the idea was to get air moving into the pyramid. You can't exist very long breathing stagnant air. So my principle is that this was a temple of initiation, and it was. The pyramid was a temple of initiation into the secret worship of Osiris, the sun god, the secret worship of Lucifer. Other Masons have confirmed this as well. Manly P. Hall, the 33rd degree Mason, has written, the pyramids, the great temples, Egyptian temples of initiation. He wrote, the illumined of antiquity entered its portals as men, they came forth as gods. So the pyramid has a specific function, to make gods out of men after they were initiated into Lucifer worship. And to confirm that, Helena Petrovna Blavatsky wrote the following on page 462 of her book entitled The Secret Doctrine. The king's chamber in Cheops pyramid is thus an Egyptian holy of holies. On the days of the mysteries of initiation, the candidate, representing the solar god, had to descend into the sarcophagus and represent the energizing ray. Emerging from it on the following morning, he typified the resurrection of life after the change called death. In the great mysteries, his figurative death lasted 2 days, when with the sun, notice here that she capitalized the word sun. This is a different death from the one listed before. Here she is talking about the death of Lucifer, the sun god. When with the sun, he arose on the 3rd morning. The Bible records that Jesus arose on the 3rd day, so this is once again a substitute of the phony resurrection in simultation of the real thing. Blavatsky wrote this in volume 1 of her book entitled The Secret Doctrine. The sarcophagus was the baptismal font upon emerging from which the neophyte was born again and became an adept. So those who study the pyramid and tell you that it was built as a tomb for the burial of a pharaoh are simply not telling you the truth. And the fact that the pyramid is a temple of initiation into Lucifer worship will play a major role in a drama that is going to unfold very, very shortly, as I will explain a little later. Next, I'd like to discuss the lion as a symbol. Manly P. Hall is certainly aware of the significance of the lion as a symbol. This is a drawing in his book entitled The Secret Teachings of All Ages, entitled The Lion of the Sun. Perhaps you cannot see it, but he has a lion laying down in front of the sun. Albert Pike wrote that there is a connection between the two. The Egyptians put lions under the throne of Horus, this being the name of the sun. And this is a drawing of a Greek coin showing the serpent's head on the body of showing the lion's head on the body of a serpent. Notice this time that the lion's head has 13 rays emanating from it. This coin shows the connection between the lion, the snake, and the number 13. Also in Egyptian hieroglyphics, the lion represented a rebirth. Notice that the table that this body is resting on has a lion's head at one end and his tail on the other. The table was where the priest prepared the deceased for his trip into the afterlife. This is a picture of a drawing of a Mayan hieroglyph. Notice that this table shows heads of 2 lions and what appears to be a god sitting on the table. Here is a drawing of a woman riding on a serpent bottom and lion's head. It appears that she is riding on a combination of the lion and the serpent as she seeks out wisdom. The Masons use the lion as a symbol as well. This is a slide of the lion's head inside a symbol of the sun on the front door of the Masonic Temple in Washington, D.C. As I've said before, the lion is a symbol of eternal life, and it appears as if the Masons are saying that you can reach eternal life to the sun god if you but open this door of the Masonic Lodge. So they are saying that it is not religion, but entrance into the Masonic Lodge that will lead you into eternal life. This is once again the book written by Manly P. Hall entitled The Lost Keys of Freemasonry. Mr. Hall shows this drawing on page 3 of the book. And you'll notice that there is a person inside a box about the size of the box in the pyramid. And on his right, reaching down, is a man dressed with a lion's head on. The caption underneath the picture reads, "This picture shows how the grip of the lion's paw was given in the pyramid mysteries." The priest wore a mask of a lion over his head. I'll explain why the lion's head is used in this part of the initiation in a few minutes. Mr. Hall continues, "By this grip, the spirit in man, long buried in the sepulchre of substance, is raised to life, and the candidate goes forth as a builder entitled to the wages of an initiate." So now we can see that there was an initiation in the pyramid and that it represented a process that made the initiate into a master mason. The Masons have a similar ceremony inside their Masonic rituals and initiation ceremonies. This is what Albert Pike says on page 373 of his book entitled Morals and Dogma. Initiation was considered to be a mystical death, a death into the infernal regions. And the perfect epopt, that's the way I'll pronounce it, I don't know how to pronounce that word. Mr. Pike does not define the word, but it appears to mean an initiated Mason, was then said to be regenerated, newborn, restored to a renovated existence of light, a life, light, and purity. And then on page 388, he writes about another initiation ceremony, this time a ceremony into the ancient mystery religion of Isis worship. Isis was first the mother and then the wife of Osiris, the sun god of ancient Egypt. Mr. Pike wrote, "Wherefore the goddess, in the wisdom of her divinity, hath been accustomed to select those who may through her providence be in a manner born again and commence the career of a new existence." Another who wrote about the Luciferic initiation was David Spangler, a New Age religion and author I quoted before. He wrote this in his 1978 book entitled Reflections of the Christ. Reflections on the Christ, forgive me. The true light of Lucifer cannot be seen through sorrow, through darkness, through rejection. Here he admits that the light of Lucifer cannot be seen through darkness. What he was saying, since he and others believe that religion is darkness, is that man cannot know the true nature of Lucifer through religion. Mr. Spangler goes on, Lucifer works within each of us to bring us to wholeness, and as each of us moves into a new day, each of us in some way is brought to that point which I term the Luciferic initiation. The particular doorway, I'm sorry, I was one slide behind there. Each of us in some way is brought to that point which I term the Luciferic initiation. The particular doorway through which the individual must pass, if he is to come fully into the presence of his light and his wholeness, Lucifer comes to give us the final gift of wholeness, and if we accept it, then he is free and we are free. That is the Luciferic initiation. It is the one that many people now will be facing, for it is an initiation into the new age. So Mr. Spangler was saying that each of us will be given a choice, and if we accept it, we'll be initiated into Lucifer worship. And on page 428, Mr. Pike discusses another of the initiation ceremonies, this time the one in India. This is what he says about the third degree in those ceremonies. The third degree initiate was then said to be born again. So some of those initiated into the ancient mystery religion are said to be born again. We'll discuss this in the next section of the lecture today. Since there are Christians who go through a biblically based experience called being born again to Jesus, it is important for the public to now ask of those claiming to be born again to whom? Jesus or Lucifer? I will explain why this is significant in a few minutes, and all of what I've said about the pyramid will come together. This is a drawing of a sign given by the Masons called the lion's paw in a book about the Masonic initiation ceremony. It is made by making a semi-fist of the right hand and then placing it over the heart. This is a picture of a small statue of Khufu, the builder of the pyramid. This little statue is probably 5,000 or 6,000 years old. Notice that he is giving the lion's paw sign. This statue is, as I said, about 5,000 to 6,000 years old, and it shows the lion's paw being given by the builder of the pyramid. And so obviously it's very old. This is a statue of the Egyptian high priest Cal giving what appears to be the sign for the lion's paw again. According to the article that accompanied this picture, the high priest served all three pharaohs who built pyramids on the plateau at Giza, Egypt. This is a picture of Karl Marx, the so-called father of communism, giving the same sign, although in this case he's concealing the sign underneath his coat. This was a common way during the past to conceal the fact that the person was a member of the Luciferian worship. Karl Marx was a Satan worshiper.